It's a victory for the Dark Gods at the London Grand Tournament. Let's take a look at an army list that's won one of the biggest events of the year. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos, and more specifically taking a look at the Emperor's Children roster of Alexandre Sacco, who's won the event in the name of Slaanesh. It's always pretty interesting to see the lists that take the very biggest tournaments around. Often at these enormous events you get some of the best and brightest players competing with top lists, and what comes out on top is pretty interesting, pretty much guaranteeing that the army's got a very strong spot in the meta, and also that it was played to perfection against a bunch of good opponents. It looks like the victories were at least fairly convincing for the last few rounds though. The list dealt with some Necrons, a Chaos Space Marine mirror, and then some Tau Empire in the final, and did so fairly convincingly with a greater than 10-point differential on the victory points. As a legion, the Emperor's Children do have plenty of interesting tricks to bring to the table. They have the trait Flawless Perfection to ignore any hit rolls or weapon skill or ballistic skill modifiers, and 6s to wound get an extra pip of AP at range or melee. Perhaps not the most enormous damage buff that one, but it will add up over the course of a game. Their stratagems tend to be fairly efficient, really quite a lot of good ones for amping up melee in all sorts of different ways. They've got a Fights in Death one, which can be pretty brutal if the opponent's charging you rather than the other way around, and then a few really nice ones for a melee army, a d6 plus 6-inch charge, a Heroic Intervention one that's bigger for characters, and 2 CP to make enemies fight last if you do happen to have an Emperor's Children character in combat. Basically Chaos do melee well, and Emperor's Children are pretty well set up to dominate the fight phase with a bunch of sneaky tricks. For particularly standout units, they have efficient Noise Marines in the troop section, with some great Blastmasters and Sonic weapons. Melee characters are going to be pretty good with all of those buffs, and particularly any characters with psychic powers or prayers as well. The Slaanesh Advance and Charge and 5+ Feel No Pain are both pretty excellent. Moving on to the list itself, the Emperor's Children list was arranged in a single battalion and a supreme command for the ever-present Abaddon the Despoiler, and as well as getting the Slaanesh keyword on everything, you do have to pay for the Mark of Slaanesh on any core or character units as well, though it's certainly not too bad on the buffing characters or on big units like Terminators. It can be quite nice to get the Slaanesh keyword on units that wouldn't normally be able to use it though, things like Possessed or Warp Talons. For characters leading the list, Abaddon the Despoiler doesn't really need too much explaining. 300 points worth of pure rage, enormously durable with that capped damage and the Mark of Tzeentch, massive combat with Dracnium for a bunch of attacks, 3 different Warlord traits in one, and allowing some very big rerolls, quite often aimed at big blocks of Terminators if he's not using them for himself. He is so standout that he's really not worth taking, even in all the other legions and even Chaos Knights. Then we've got a couple of buffing characters, both look like they'll be following around a big block of Terminators, a Dark Apostle with the Illusory Supplication for only being hit on a 4+, and as he's marked of Slaanesh as well, he also gets Blissful Devotion, an Advance and Charge prayer that could potentially be an interesting one to swap into if you just absolutely need to catch something with one of the units fast. The other buffing character is a Master of Possession. He takes the Liber Hereticus to allow you to manifest an extra power and also get a bit of extra range as well. They've taken the Pact of Flesh that allows you to heal and resurrect Terminators, could also be interesting targeted at Abaddon as well. Mutated Invigoration, usually to get the Terminators up to Toughness 5 to combo with the Black Rune, and also Delightful Agonies as well, a 5+ Feel No Pain. Between this little lot and Illusory Supplication, the Terminators won't be going anywhere, and you could potentially turn the buffs on other units if it made sense to. Finally, to round up the HQ section, there's another massive melee threat in the Lord Discordant. They've got the nasty Bale Flamer with the extra hits from Let the Galaxy Burn, the Technovirus Injector, and takes the tried and tested Flames of Spite Warlord trait, which allows you reroll wound rolls and extra wounds on 6s. With the mass attacks that the Lord Discordant gets, it usually gets a lot of mortal wounds. He also takes the Mantle of Traitors as well, which I've seen used before in Emperor's Children. This one allows you to do an Epic Deed stratagem for 0 CP, and that one can be the one for making enemy units fight last. Quite nice to have that as basically a free once per game pop-up stratagem. It gives you some nice insurance against dying in melee before you get to fight. As if that weren't enough though, it also allows you to reroll hit rolls too, so that's reroll all hits and wounds. A pretty brutal melee threat all in all, even if there's no other buffs going around at all. I think you could even potentially advance and charge the Lord Discordant if you needed to with the Dark Apostle, but that would cost you the prayer on the Terminators. Then moving past characters to the rest of the list, one of the most interesting things about this one is that there's 4 units of 5 Noise Marines in the troops section, and they're an interesting mix of range and melee to be honest. They all take the Blastmaster, which is pretty much auto-include, but it's decided to make the rest of the squad into a fairly fighty unit with chainswords and a power fist, rather than taking the sonic blasters. To be fair, on paper that does make a lot of sense. Emperor's Children get on great with power fists, ignoring the penalties, and they'll be hitting on 2s with the icon. You've got a pretty nice unit there that can move around with 3 shots at strength 8, AP 3, and damage 3 or 4, or still hitting on 3s even if they move around, and then a pretty brutal melee punch to follow that up, and the squad has Auspex. Quite cool to see some troops that are so worth fielding that they've maxed out the slots. There's then 2 units of cheap cultists with melee weapons, I'd guess maybe more for objectives and actions and grunt work, and then the great big Terminator squad that seems to be the core of just about every Chaos list these days. 10 Terminators with the Black Rune of Damnation. They can receive all the juicy buffs from the Master of Possession and Dark Apostle and make them borderline unkillable. And as their Emperor's Children, they have gone very heavy on the Power Fist, 2 Chain Fists and 6 Power Fists, all ignoring the penalty to hit, and also 2 Combi Melters as well, again able to be fired without penalty even if advancing or shooting both profiles. Could maybe be an interesting unit to use Relentless Devastation on as well, 1 CP to shoot normally even after you have advanced. They'll basically be able to slog up to an objective and laugh off just about all damage, hopefully break some important parts of the enemy army, and then perhaps later in the game, if they do really need to catch something in combat, then advance and charging is still an option, and with a very long charge too with the Emperor's Children's stratagem. Finally, there's a unit of 5 Possessed, a nice unit that needs maybe a little bit less support and can beat down isolated enemy units. Again, they could be an interesting target for the long charge stratagem. And finally, there's a single Venom Crawler, a fairly common body for a Master of Possession to give you a better chance to cast, as well as being okay in its own right for damage and defense, and can chew up some Space Marines or something if it needs to. Overall, it goes without saying that it's a very strong list, taking down a tournament with over 650 people. I'd say perhaps the single most interesting bit of the whole thing are the Noise Marine loadouts, really going heavy on them with Blast Masters and combat loadouts too. They're just quite interesting units to have in the troop slot, and really cool to see them being used that way at the absolute highest level of play. Lots of scary things about this one, nigh unkillable Terminators, lots of OBSEC and scary damage dealing Noise Marines running around, plus a few more scary lurking threats in Abaddon, the Lord Discordant and the Possessed. A massive congrats to Mr. Sacco, of course. I feel like the list would have a whole load of interesting mobility options that you could get things across the board very quickly when you needed to, but maybe deciding exactly which one to use and which bits to go for might be a bit of a harder choice. Definitely one that would take a lot of skill to play. So anyway, let me know what you make of the list and Chaos taking down the London Grand Tournament. Of course, any further insights as to how the units were used or the list plays are greatly appreciated, or just the relative strength of Chaos Marines and Emperor's Children in general. It was interesting to see that they also placed 3rd as well, stealing back a little bit of representation from creations of Bile maybe. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k updates coming. I do tend to post new videos just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked down in the video description if you're interested. Making all the content does take an awful lot of time and effort, so if you are enjoying quite a lot, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, an absolutely enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.